So anyway, a little 13 years ago, I did a book called Jimmy Corrigan, the Smartest Kid on Earth. It's a graphic. Thank you. This is very nice. This is thank you. It's about a emotionally impaired 30-some-year-old meeting his father for the first time. It was sort of a dry run for me meeting my own father, who I actually did in the process of the book. It didn't really help me at all, but I made a book in the process. So this is the back cover of the book itself, kind of a plot map for the book. It toggles back and forth between 1893 and 1983 in Chicago. This is a street corner. It's kind of like Jackson in Michigan, I guess, where some of the major events of the book itself take place. Hold on a second here, sorry. I can't actually see this. Since then, I've been working I do a regular periodical started in the 90s called the Acme Novelty Library, which is really a really good reason why you generally shouldn't name anything in your 20s. Fortunately, Tommy Davidson has managed to come up with something that's not embarrassing, so I'm very proud of her for that. I wish I could have done that. Since then, it's been serializing a book called Rusty Brown, which is a story about a kid who wakes up one morning convinced that he has superpowers because he can hear his parents arguing through the walls of the house, so he thinks he has super hearing. It's Omaha, Nebraska, and it tells the story of 6 different characters revolving around this main young character. One of them is his dad, who's a failed science fiction author. And the character who, in the first part of the story, is a teenager who emotionally abuses this young boy by spitting in his glove while his kid was hanging on the wall, which of course never happened to me when I was a kid. But this particular chapter about this character named Jason Lint is, I wanted to try to get into the soul of the character somewhat, so I decided to do the story about his entire life from beginning to end, where each page represents a few seconds out of this particular character's life, beginning with his birth and ending with his death. So every page represents one particular year, and each page hopefully in some way tries to get at a sense of his developing consciousness pictorially and textually. So here it's sort of a pretty verbal kind of memory of his mother and his father when he's in the crib. And then as he gets older and language starts to form in his mind, and his concepts and memories form, and they becomes more cogent and understandable what we think of as actual memories and experiences. And this is from later in the book, he gets married and has a kid of his own, and then takes over his father's business and shortly runs it into the ground, and then divorces his wife, cheats on his wife first, of course, when he's in his middle age. And it's pretty clear how that story will end. I also occasionally do covers for the New Yorker, thanks to the munificence both of the New Yorker and of Francoise Mouly, who is the art editor there. These are 2 covers from last year, the Mother's Day issue and the Back to School issue. It was so nice. I'm putting something in the beer today or something. It's particularly friendly. Thank you. And then this year, I also did the Back to School and the Mother's Day covers again. Thank you. The first one is post-Sandy Hook, which my daughter is in school at By Elementary in Oak Park, and she's actually pictured in the previous one. And I tried to get a sense of really the trepidation that I felt personally as a parent sending a kid back to school, and also I think every American feels when guns are still allowed. And this is the one on the right, just ran. That's actually my cousin Sally and her family, though it's not necessary to know that, I guess. These are some earlier covers here for the money issue and Halloween issue. The money issue actually ran as a gatefold. I think I have that as the next slide here, which means in the printing jargon, that's a piece of paper that folds out to a larger image. And the New Yorker very generously let me publish a comic strip that then connects to the cover. So the cover itself is actually the first panel of a somewhat serious story that tried to get at what the nature of money actually is in terms of property and freedom, etc. And in contemporary life. It was made possible, however, by the back page of the gatefold being bought by Bank of America. So it's about which I will say nothing else. So this is about a suburban family. The main character here is the mother, who ended up then was actually the main character in the book Building Stories. This is the very first strip that I did with her in it. I never thought that it would actually be a long graphic novel. I just did the first strip there on the left about this woman living on the top floor of a Chicago apartment building going on a failed blind date for a magazine, an obscure Swiss magazine. I had to do every single strip in both French and German, which meant that well, first of all, I can't speak French or German, and I didn't really want to letter every strip, so I tried to do these strips without any words. I did the one strip, and they accepted it, and then I came to deadline 2 months later for another strip, and I thought, well, I guess I'll just do another strip about the inhabitants of the next floor down, which is a couple, and then from there on, I kind of oriented them around the seasons, and for better or for worse, I realized I was working on a story, which is kind of the way I work on everything. I don't really plan stuff, which I don't know if I necessarily recommend that as a way of working, but it seems to kind of work for me. I found that every time I try to plan something, it comes out very false and articulated and unreal. It doesn't feel alive. I find that I have to allow the images in the stories to come alive on the page themselves. I started it, I think, 12 years ago now. This is two pages out of the story that I did for the New York Times Magazine in an optimistic and failed experiment that they did in their magazine called Funny Pages, which I unfortunately inaugurated with an incredibly unfunny strip. So it generated pretty much nothing but hate mail, but I was still grateful to them for letting me run it. This is another story about the same character. The more I wrote about the character, the more interested I became in her. This is about her first sexual experiences in college, where she's deeply involved with an older guy who then dumps her, for lack of a better word. Remember, this is kind of a joke about Facebook, but I don't want to go into too deeply because there's not a lot of time here. And I tried to really get into the mind of the character. This is an attempt to try to capture the sort of circular thoughts that go through your head when you're falling asleep and maybe not feeling too optimistic the way things are going in your life. So this is a attempt to get at a sense of her entire day is told through a wordless strip of her living in the building from different moments of different days, but assembled in such a way that it gets a sense of what her daily life is like. As a kid, I just really liked drawing pictures about what happened in a person's life, whether it was mine or a character I'd made up. I really feel like there's a warmth to that. I really feel like that's ultimately what we look for when we read books in a lot of cases. I find that when I read like 19th century literature, I find myself looking for the details. What did it feel like to be alive 150 years ago? What are the differences between that and now? Are there any real differences? So that, for better or for worse, was my aim here as well. These are her actual diary pages. She went to art school, failed at that, thought maybe she wanted to be a writer, but didn't really follow up on that either. Because I think a lot of people have creative ambitions that they might not let other people know about. I think everybody in some way has something kind of deeply locked within them, be it music or storytelling or drawing or something. So she actually signs up for a writing class, which ends up being sort of a painful emotional disaster for her. So I've never actually taken a writing class, but it truly sounds horrible to me. I mean, this is bad enough, just standing up here sort of nervously trying to defend myself or something. So when she graduates from college, she gets this is before she moves into the apartment. She works as a nanny in the suburb of Oak Park. Most people, I assume, here know, for a rather rich family, and ends up taking care of the family's kid. That here, and then as later in the story, she ends up getting married and having a kid, and then moving to that same suburb. So when she becomes a mother, I'm asked occasionally. You know, the character does not have a name in the book at all, which is it's one of the few things that you can do in comics that comics does really well is you can have a nameless character without appearing too pretentious or fancy about it. I think I don't know, but I also feel like when you have a kid, everybody then you actually have a name. It's you're a mom or you're a dad or something. And I want to try to point at that and say that and point at how once you have a kid, everything in your life changes from beginning to end. Everything revolves around this particular strip is printed the actual size that her daughter is in the book. So.